Hi there. I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. My topic today is application risk management. Privileged to welcome to the virtual studio Dan Plotnick. He's the CEO and co-founder of Apiro. Hey, Dan, thanks so much for taking time to speak with me.
Thank you very much, Tom, for having me and giving me the chance to talk about application risk management.
Let's start here. You have used the phrase garbage in, garbage out. My question for you, what's wrong with how enterprises traditionally manage application security risk?
Maybe let's start with the fundamentals. Okay, so application security market is here was exists for 24 plus years. The technology is kind of old. All the static analysis tools, they don't have the context, so they are running on a piece of code or a snapshot of a code, and they don't understand what's the business impact of the application. They don't understand if this application is internet facing. They don't understand the knowledge and the seniority and the security maturity of the developers that are actually writing the code. They don't understand the history of the code bases. So what happened is that from a compliance perspective, you must run a SaaS. So you enable the SaaS, you buy a SaaS tool. It generates 80% false positives without tuning the tool. After tuning the tool, which takes months for every application, it goes to 40% false positives. And then you have, one Appsec engineer across 200 developers, which is the best ratio, based off BISM. And then what? Now you need to handle 1,000 alerts, and it's only from one tool. Then you have so many other processes that you need to run, like security risk assessment and threat modeling and SCA scanning and container scanning and penetration testing. And then what? So much noise, so many alerts, and you need something that will change the fundamentals, not yet another tool that can aggregate the results and show you nice graphs, but you need something that will change the essence.
It's a great overview, Don. Tell me, with organizations you see today, what are some of the common pitfalls you commonly see, and what are the potentially costly impacts of these pitfalls?
So it's a complex question for a complex market. Okay, so maybe just for the audience, I'm sure they all know that there is kind of a cacophony in the Appsec industry. So many manual processes, so many different tools, so many stages throughout the software development lifecycle. So let's take the three things that I saw, and by the way, I felt firsthand as a director of software engineering at Microsoft after Microsoft acquired my previous startup, is that you need to start with assessing the risk of your applications before you start developing or before you release to production. How do you do that? You need risk assessment questionnaires. So you go through manual 100 questions, and you ask the people, did you expose a new API? Did you store a new PII data? Where did you store it? And so on and so forth. So this is one of the biggest pitfalls of the Appsec industry, because without assessing the risk and connecting the dots, from the design to the code to the shipment to the cloud, if you don't have the visibility and the context around them, you cannot assess the risk, because these manual risk assessment questionnaires are based on self-attestation, and nobody validates the answers against the code. So this is the first really an intensive process that wastes a lot of money, a lot of time for both the Appsec engineers, the compliance teams, and the developers, okay? So you're wasting their time. Instead of scaling the business, developing the business logic, they are dealing with these questions again and again. The second thing is, how do you, at the design phase, you enforce your security and compliance requirements in an automatic manner? This is a very heavy process that you need someone with the knowledge. You need to catch the changes at the right time. And the third thing is, how do you provide all the context to the Appsec engineer or shift left to the developers so they can remediate the risks early in the development process before you ship to the cloud, okay? So these are the three, I think, main pitfalls or challenges that I see that are wasting a lot of money and stopping the developers from moving faster and faster and faster. And by the way, one more thing that maybe if you will allow me to add, I didn't see, not in the small development shops, 100 plus, or medium and large enterprises, they don't have an inventory of all their code assets, okay? So if you don't know what you have, how can you protect it? How you can have a meaningful and knowledgeable discussion with the development teams? And today they're relying on old-fashioned CMDB solutions where you need to manually update the inventory. And this is a big problem in the Appsec industry today, the visibility.
Hey, Don, a few times you use the word context, and I've heard you say that context is missing. What kind of context are you talking about?
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for this question. Context is like when you calculate a risk of a line of code, okay, or a module or an application. You need to understand what are the compliance requirements? What is the knowledge of the developers? Where do you deploy this application? Which technologies, open source or from an infrastructure as code or application code aspect, which technologies you are using? And I can name like 200 risk factors like that. And the context means to connect the dots between them. And let me give you a specific small example. Going back to our initial point. Let's say I scanned my code with a legacy SAST solution, okay? I got 1,000 vulnerabilities. Why do I care if I have 1,000 vulnerabilities while only 5 of them are related to an internet-facing API that exposes PII data to the internet, to a partner or a user, and it's as part of a high business impact application? Why do I care? So this is the context that we can bring to a vulnerability. This is the context that we can bring to a change, a code change. This is the context that allows us in Apiro to trigger the relevant process at the relevant time and bring the relevant people to help remediate the risk early in the development process. So just to sum up, context in the application security space means a lot of data points that you need to connect together to a story that will resonate to the Appsec engineer, to the developer, to the business owner, and eventually this story will help them reduce the risk and close the right issues that the attacker, the modern attacker, will exploit or use.
So, Adon, to take this to the next step, why is it so hard for current tools, current Appsec programs to be able to leverage all of this context?
I think I can summarize this into two main points. Okay. The first one, which we already talked about, like briefly talked about, the visibility part. They don't know, they don't have one place, organizations today, they don't have one place where they can see the application code assets, the open source code assets, the infrastructure as code assets, the knowledge of the developers, the business impact of the applications in one place. So this is the visibility part. And the next part is that you need a new way to scan the code. The static analysis tools are, the legacy ones are 20 years old technology that they cannot understand in one engine that you have an API that exposes PII data, store it in an S3 bucket in the cloud. And from the infrastructure point of view, it's missing encryption. And the developer that committed the code was a newbie backend developer, and no one, like a senior developer, didn't approve the pull request. And now you connect the dots. And without a new approach of scanning code across application code, open source code, and infrastructure as code, together with NLP capabilities, text analysis, what you as a developer, you wrote in the commit message and the pull request discussions. And who are you, Tom, as a developer? You are a top-notch backend developer in Java that deals with Spring Boot, or you are a Python developer with low security maturity that deals with a different framework. This is together. This is the missing part that customers have today. By the way, this is why we won the RSA Innovation Sandbox, because we came up with a new approach to analyze the application code, infrastructure as code, and open source code, the developer knowledge and activities. And on top of that, build a platform that can ingest anything that you have. And based on the risk engine, trigger the relevant processes. So from one hand, it's a real security and compliance play. But on the other hand, it's a real ROI play. We can prove you that with one Appsec engineer to 200 developers, you can do 10x more.
I'm going to come back and ask you about Apiro, but talk to me first about automation. What role can automation play ideally in application risk management?
So there are few, let's tackle this based on the software development lifecycle processes, okay? So let's start from the design. I'm a product manager, then I'm asking you as an engineering manager, I'm opening a Jira ticket, and I'm asking you, Tom, I need to integrate with a payment service. We need to integrate our mobile application with a payment service. You need to automatically identify this feature request as a risky one or potentially risky one and trigger the relevant process. What is the relevant process? A threat model. You can automatically identify by scanning the text, identifying the knowledge of all the people involved, and request the Appsec engineer to talk to Tom and start a threat model. The second development phase is the commit, where I push my code into the source control manager or the pull request. So you want at this phase to tell to the developer or trigger a different process, and run a security code review. You can run a security code review based on a change that might introduce a risk, or an architecture drift. Someone changed the architecture without a proper review. So you can integrate into the existing development tools and say to the developer, hey, you introduced an architecture drift that might introduce a risk to the application, and it's a high business impact application. Please, and we can automatically bring Tom into the pull request, or out of band, at the commit phase, send a Slack message to the relevant Appsec engineer. The next click is the CI/CD. Now you want to build your software and you want to deploy it and deliver it to the cloud. We can, at this phase, say, hey, you didn't pass these compliance checks. Without passing these compliance checks, you cannot move on to production. And we can trigger the relevant processes to help you remediate these compliance checks before you deploy to the cloud. And this is where we automate from design to code to cloud every process that you have today. And we are not as a solution. We do not enforce ourselves on you. We embrace all your current processes, Appsec processes, and automate them without changing what you used to or how you used to work.
Hey, Don, I want to bring it back to Apiro now. If you were to summarize, how would you say that Apiro is helping customers take a fresh look at application risk management?
We secure the software development lifecycle of customers, and we're doing it by scanning the code, the application code, the infrastructure as code, and the open source code. We enrich the code analysis with text analysis and with developer knowledge analysis. Based on that, this is the fundamental. We can integrate any process or any tool that you have today into the platform and get a risk-based decisions that are based on business impact, not based on security score, CVSS score, vulnerabilities. Nobody cares about vulnerabilities. We care about business impact, and we want to move as fast as we can without all the noise that we have today.
Very well said. Hey, Don, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. Thanks so much for making time for me.
Thank you very much, Tom, for having me, and would love to talk to you in the future.
I look forward to it. Again, the topic has been application risk management. You've just heard from Adam Plotnick, the CEO and co-founder of Apiro. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you, as always, for giving us your time and attention.